Les Miserables, Part 2 of 3. Chapter 3. Monsieur Madeleine is, of course, Jean Valjean. You knew that already. After Dean, he sells the bishop's silver plates, but keeps the candlesticks. He comes to Montreux, builds his factory, works hard, is kind to other people. He makes a new, good life, and is true to the Bishop of Dean. But after Valjean left prison in Toulon, and before he came to Dean, he was hungry. And in a street in Toulon, he stole some money from a boy, just 1 franc, to buy bread. Because he did this, the law in France says that prisoner Valjean must go back to prison and stay there for life. He can never be a free man again. And so we meet Javert. Before Montreux, he was a prison guard at Toulon. The law is his God, and he hates all criminals. He remembers Jean Valjean, that big, strong man, very well. He wants to see him in prison again, and he, Inspector Javert, is going to put him there. Jean Valjean remembers Javert now. He remembers the cold eyes, the hard voice, the cruel prison guard's smile. He remembers and is afraid. He knows that Javert is his enemy for life. But he remembers Fantine, too. He remembers her dying words. Please take care of Cosette, please. How can he leave this little girl without a mother, without a friend in the world? He must find her, Javert or no Javert. Monsieur and Madame Thénardier live in a village called Montfermeil near Paris. There was no water in the village, and the nearest water was a small river in a wood 15 minutes' walk away. People carried the water in buckets to their houses. Cosette hated that wood. At night, the trees made noises. She was frightened of the noises, frightened of the dark, and with a heavy bucket of water, it was a long walk home. One dark winter night in 1823, Madame Thénardier sent Cosette out to the river for water. Cosette ran to the river, and then, with her heavy bucket of water, she began to walk home. The trees were noisy tonight, whispering and laughing at her, and the little girl began to cry. "Oh, please, God, help me. Please, dear God." And suddenly the bucket was gone. A great hand came down and took it from her. She looked up and saw a big man in an old yellow coat. Sometimes we know without words when something good is happening. The little girl knew that now, and she was not frightened of the big man, not a bit. The man spoke to her. "Child, this is a very heavy bucket. Shall I carry it for you?" "Yes, monsieur." "How old are you?" "I am 8 years old, monsieur." "Where is your mother?" "I don't know," said the child. "I haven't got a mother." "What's your name?" "Cosette." The big man stopped. He put the bucket down and looked into Cosette's face. "Why are you carrying a heavy bucket of water at this time of night? Who sent you?" "Madame Thénardier." "I would like to talk to this Madame Thénardier. Shall we go and see her?" "Yes, monsieur." Cosette was not afraid of the tree noises now. This big man, with his gentle voice, was a new and wonderful thing in her life. They walked to the Thénardiers' house. "Please, monsieur, can I carry the bucket now?" "But why?" I can't ask people for help, Madame says. She hits me when I do that," Cosette said. "She hits me all the time." He gave her the bucket. The Thénardiers were very surprised to see Cosette's new friend, this big man in the old yellow coat. Inside the house, the big man looked at Cosette. He saw her thin clothes, her dirty hair, her big, frightened eyes. She was small for her 8 years. Her hands were red from kitchen work, and she had no shoes. "Why does this child have no shoes on her feet on this cold winter night?" he said to Madame Thénardier. Madame Thénardier looked at Cosette angrily. "Go into the kitchen, Cosette. There is work to do. Go." "And who are you?" Monsieur Thénardier said. "I am here for Fantine, the child's mother," said the big man. "You don't need to know my name. Fantine is dead, so you can get no more money from here." from her. Here, he put some money on the table, is 1,500 francs. Now, call the child. I'm taking her away. When Jean Valjean and Cosette left Montfermeil, Cosette did not look back. She never wanted to see Madame Thénardier again. She put her cold little hand into Jean Valjean's great hand and looked up into his face. "Monsieur," she said, can I call you father?" Valjean looked down at her big round eyes. "Yes," he said. He did not know love. He did not understand love. But in that moment, suddenly, he felt a father's love for this small child. "Yes," he said again. "Yes, you can call me father. It's a good name." Hand in hand, they walked away on the road to Paris. In Paris, Cosette learnt to laugh and to sing like a bird and to be happy. Jean Valjean learnt to be father and mother to this child, and he loved her dearly. But they lived quietly, moved house often, and only went out at night. Because Javert, too, was in Paris. When Valjean escaped from Montreux, Javert came to Paris to look for him. He was now an important inspector in the Paris police. Every criminal in Paris was afraid of Inspector Javert. Once Valjean saw Javert by the river, and the next day he looked for a new place to live. He found one, behind the high walls of a girls' school. The school gave Valjean a job as a gardener, and he lived in a little house in the big gardens. Cosette lived in the school, but every day she came to the gardener's little house for 1 hour. They talked and they sang and they read books. It was the happiest hour in the day for her and for Jean Valjean. And so the years passed. Chapter 4. Marius. 9 years pass. Valjean and Cosette are living in the Rue Plumet in Paris, in a house with a big garden. It is a quiet street, and nobody comes there. This pleases Javert, because he is still afraid of Inspector Javert. Cosette is now a young woman. She is tall, with golden brown hair. She is beautiful, but there are many beautiful faces in the world. The wonderful thing about Cosette's face is her smile, a slow, warm, gentle smile, like sunlight after rain. And now we must meet Marius and his young friend Gavroche. Marius is a student, a young man with many ideas, but no money. Paris is full of young men like this. Marius has a grandfather. His father is dead, but he does not talk to him. Their political ideas are very different. At 17, he leaves home with 30 francs, his watch, and a small bag of clothes. Now 5 years older, he lives with other students, and they talk all night about books and ideas, politics and government, life and death. All students are like this. They live for ideas and do a little work here and there, when they need to. Gavroche is a child of the Paris streets. He is 11 or 12 years old, and wears a man's trousers and a woman's shirt. A kind woman gave these clothes to him. He lives on the streets, knows everybody, goes everywhere, and enjoys life. Well, why not? He knows no other life, only this one. Marius loved walking through the streets and gardens of Paris, and he often walked in the Luxembourg garden. One day in the garden he saw a man with a young girl. The man was about 60, and the girl, Marius thought, was about 17. He did not see her eyes, but he saw her golden brown hair and her slow, gentle smile. He walked past them at once and did not look back. But he came back to the Luxembourg the next day, and the day after that, and for the next 5 days. The man and the girl were always there. He could not stop looking at the girl. He wanted very much to see that smile again. On the 7th day, the girl turned her head and looked at Marius. She looked into his eyes across the garden, and that look went, like a bullet from a gun, into Marius' heart. There were no words, but at once Marius knew, and the girl knew. This was love. Life stopped for Marius then. He spent hours in the Luxembourg, and every time he saw her, the sun came out, and all the birds in the garden began singing. But the man began to look at Marius too, and his face was not friendly. Marius was afraid, and he went to Gavroche. "Gavroche, please, you must help me." "Why, what's the matter, Monsieur Marius?" "There's a girl, Gavroche. She walks in the Luxembourg every day. I want you to follow her home and tell me the address." "Why don't you follow her? I'm busy," said Gavroche. "I'm afraid to," said Marius. "Her father, grandfather, I don't know, is watching me. He doesn't like me." "Why is this important, Monsieur Marius?" Gavroche said. He had a big smile on his face. "Because I'm in love," shouted Marius. "Please, Gavroche, do it." Gavroche ran away, laughing. 2 days later, he came to Marius's rooms. "Rue Plumet," he said. "House at the end of the street. Hard to find. You need to look for it." Spring came, and Cosette began to go out into the garden at Rue Plumet. She was usually alone. Her old servant, Toussaint, was always in the kitchen, and father, Jean Valjean, was in his room, reading. Cosette was sad. She remembered the young man in the Luxembourg garden, but father no longer wanted to go there. But that evening in the Rue Plumet garden, something very wonderful happened. She heard a voice, a man's voice. She looked around, and it was him. "I'm so sorry," he said. "Please don't be afraid. I just wanted to. You remember the Luxembourg garden? I saw you there for the first time. I can't forget you. Day and night I think about you. Please don't be afraid. You see, I love you. It just happened to me, and I can't stop it. Don't be afraid, please." Cosette listened to this wonderful river of words and then held out her hand to him. He took her hand, and she pulled it to her and put it against her heart. "Then, you love me?" he said. "Of course, you know that." A kiss. No words. They did not need words. Later, words came. The story of his life, the story of her life, everything. Between lovers, everything is interesting. When they were done with words, Cosette put her head on Marius' shoulder and asked, "What is your name?" "My name is Marius, and yours?" "Cosette." Every evening they met secretly in the garden at Rue Plumet. A kiss, a gentle laugh, whispered words of love. It was the spring and summer of their young lives. But around them, outside their garden, there was change. There were angry people. There were police and soldiers on the streets of Paris. And one day Jean Valjean said to Cosette, "My dearest child, we live in dangerous times. We must leave France and go to England." Cosette looked at him with frightened eyes. "Must we go, father?" she asked. She said. Valjean watched her face. "We must," he said. "Get ready to leave very soon." There was a change in Cosette. Valjean remembered the young man in the Luxembourg garden, and he looked at Cosette's beautiful young face. He was afraid of losing his dear daughter. That evening in the Rue Plumet garden there were many unhappy tears. "But you must follow us to England," cried Cosette. "How can I do that?" cried Marius. "I have no money, no passport even. England to me is like the moon." They held hands in the moonlight. "Listen, I have an idea," Marius said slowly. "Wait 2 days, perhaps—" "2 days?" cried Cosette. "How can I live 2 days without you?"